When the Line Connects by Trial and Error on AO3, read by Lily6645. This fic includes descriptions of self-harm, suicidal attempts, suicidal thoughts/ideation, abuse, and a bit of gore. That is your warning. Izuku was 13. He was older now, which meant he knew that when his dad came home from overseas and asked for money, he shouldn't give him any. He never visited him and his mother, although his mom barely came by the apartment anymore. And he'd been wanting to divorce Inko since a little after Izuku's diagnosis had came out. Quirkless. He can't control that about himself, so why is it everything that people care about? He remembers the crying, the screaming, the pain he'd seen, heard, and felt that night. He remembered his mom stepping in and receiving the hits meant for Izuku, which he deserved and was responsible for something already set in stone. Izuku also knew that the man had come back to Japan months, if not years ago, because he had overheard his mom on the phone talking to him. She had been crying, so when he found himself standing face to face with him on a fateful Friday morning, Izuku knew what he had to do. He put up the most serious face he could muster and told him to go away. But Hazashi only laughed.
What? You think you can scare me? Just look at yourself. You're pathetic.
Izuku's hand moved on reflex, covering his right eye that was swollen from where Kachan had hit him at school the other day. Kami, he really was a freak. Still, he wasn't going to give this man, this stranger, the money that his mother had worked so much for to keep both him and herself alive. Izuku always wondered if she was sick of him, if she secretly wanted him gone, just like everyone else. But the way she worked 3 jobs with unfairly low salaries to keep him alive, the angry tears and countless apologies she spilled when she couldn't afford to buy him a new pair of shoes, and the hugs she engulfed him in every time she came home reassured him enough. He was causing her so much trouble. Izuku was 13, which meant he was old enough to know that he was the reason for his parents' failed marriage. He was the reason his mom was never happy or resting. He was the reason why the man in front of him felt shame when looking at his own family. Izuku was an embarrassment and a mistake, a fluke in an otherwise unfair system that suppressed his equality of life for something he had no control over. But Izuku liked to think he had control over this situation. He wouldn't give this man the work and pain his mother had to endure for this money that would barely grant them food and rent for the month anyway. He wasn't going to let him win. Izuku took on a wider stance, like he had seen Kachan's friends do so many times before. All he could feel was pain. At the sight of his wobbly legs and raised fists, the older man quirked a bemused brow, not moving an inch. Izuku was 13 years old, which meant that he was taller and stronger than the barely able to speak toddler Hisashi likely remembered him to be. There was still a pretty big height difference, Izuku being a head and a half shorter than his supposed father, but the younger boy pushed back those thoughts, swallowing his anxiety with him. If he kept comparing his small, scrawny self with this muscular, well-kept father, Izuku would cower out before he could do any good. You are not allowed to be here. This is my mom's house, and you have no rights over me. He was still shaking, but Izuku congratulated himself for not stuttering. He didn't want to seem even more failed than he knew he was, than his opponent knew he was. Hisashi finally seemed to take a good look at him, observing every feature that gave away their genetic connection. He smiled, then, a smile that could make an ocean turn cold.
Oh, would you look at that? The man of the house defending his mother while she is absent.
He clasped his hands together before his smile faded into a grin.
Tell me then, where is she?
For a quirkless nobody, Izuku would say he has quite the reflexes. His suspicions were proved to be correct when he managed to dodge the first blow Hisashi sent his way, using the opportunity to step back and out of range. The man didn't seem to like that one bit. They went around for a while, Izuku dodging and hiding and backing away, so his father spit fire and fumed and kicked thin air. At some point, Izuku came to think he might actually be able to send him off, but the universe had to swiftly remind him how much it hated him. He received an unexpected blow to his stomach, which sent him tumbling to the floor.
Where is the fucking money, kid?
Hisashi placed his foot on his stomach, and Izuku felt like he was going to pass out. Please don't! The man sneered.
I didn't come here to beat you up. I can see the other people are doing that well enough already. Now, where's the money?
The foot to his stomach was pressing in, and Izuku's whole body convulsed. Hisashi watched in disgust as Izuku gagged out the little food he had eaten that day.
You got it on my shoe.
He mumbled, rubbing his said shoe against the carpet.
Useless brat.
Izuku felt pain striking up his back for a split second, and then Hisashi moved to the kitchen. The boy could only watch as he went through every small place he could find looking for the money. Izuku tensed when he finally reached the microwave, and Hisashi smirked from behind it. He pulled the envelope with the small stack of bills his mother had worked for, and Izuku's stomach twisted once more. The smell of his own vomit made bile rise in his throat once more, but he pushed it back. He couldn't let Hisashi go, not with something that didn't belong to him. Stop! Hisashi turned around.
Or what? You're going to play the hero?
You might be a failure and an asshole, but that doesn't give you the right to steal from my mother. Izuku was fuming.
If you ever loved her at least a little bit, you wouldn't be stepping on her hard work like this, much less breaking into her apartment while she's busy working. The man sent him a sharp look, and Izuku's blood ran cold. Any trace of love I had for her went away the moment she defended you. The hustle wasn't worth it. Not for me, not for my career. But guess what? He took a step closer, and Izuku hit the wall behind him. The people I was working for abroad found out that I have a quirkless son, and you want to know what they did? He paused for dramatic effect, but Izuku already knew what he was going to say as tears gathered in his eyes. They fired me, all because of you. You still managed to ruin my life even when you didn't know who I was. He stepped back, and Izuku's shoulders relaxed before he was suddenly punched in the nose. He could hear the blood pumping in his head, but the ringing in his ears was louder. I pity Inko. You don't deserve someone as loving as her. And with that, both the money for that month's rent and Izuku's father were gone. Izuku was 13, which meant he knew that anybody could enter his apartment through the broken open door Hisashi had left behind. But Izuku was 13, which meant he also understood each word his father had said and could only replay them in his head. And who would step into the apartment of the quirkless child whose mother was mostly absent anyway? His tears mixed with the blood coming from his nose, and everything stung. It stung worse than Kachan's explosions or the cuts of his razor blade. Everything was his fault. His fault, and he could do nothing to fix it. He'd ruined the lives of his parents, ruined the career of his father, and the dreams of his mother. He was more than a mistake or a burden. He was disgusting. He couldn't move for a long time, so he just sat there crying until his throat closed up and his muscles went sore. By the time he finally pushed himself to stand up, the moon was already up in the sky and crickets were singing outside his window. His nose hurt horribly, but he was scared to touch it. He wanted to do something, anything, so he wouldn't feel pain anymore. It was too much. Everything was too much. He could barely breathe through his mouth, and even then, the taste of blood coming from his nose unsettled him. Why? Why? Why him? He'd never asked to be born. He'd never asked to be quirkless. He'd never asked to be hated or bullied or shoved into lockers or spat on or suicide baited or dehumanized. How could he stay alive for his mother when he was the reason she was struggling in the first place? His mind went into overdrive, but the only constant thought in his head was, I deserve to bleed. Much like when he had been 10 years old and firmly believed that people would be much better off without him, Izuku found himself crying alone in his home years later. Why hadn't he just gone through with this back then? He had been so naive to seek comfort from strangers. For fuck's sake, that woman had ended the call when she'd heard about his quirklessness. Who was he trying to fool? Life wasn't going to get better. He wasn't going to be happier. And no one else around him was going to be happy either. Not until he would do something about it. With his still leaking nose, which was worrying, the rational part of his mind screamed, but he ignored it. Izuku walked across the apartment and over to a small razor he kept in the highest drawer of his nightstand. He wasn't worried about his mother finding it, as she barely came by, but he knew that if he kept it in plain sight, he would use it way too often. That wasn't a worry for Izuku this time. He aggressively slashed at his skin until all he could see was red, 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 and the angry part of him died down. He deserved to bleed, and now he was bleeding. A twisted part of him felt a sick sense of pride at the mess on his wrists. The other part of him felt sick. He hated blood. He hated his own blood. Why did he have to bleed? The smell made him hurl, but there was nothing left in him, so he dry heaved until his whole body started convulsing, and he felt like he was going to die just from that. He was so tempted to take the blade too close to his neck and make the heaving stop, but the terrified side of him didn't let that happen. He cried and bled and kept on heaving until everything around him blurred into splotches of color and sound. He felt so alone. He was alone. He was going to die.
Because I am here!
Izuku flinched, tearing his eyes away from the mess he had made on the floor and on his wrists in favor of looking at his phone. With shaking, painted fingers, he picked it up. Incoming call from Mom. Shit. Hello? Izuku, darling! I'm so sorry I haven't been home for the past few days. I called to ask if you have anything you need. I managed to gather some savings, and since we don't have to worry about rent or food this month, I was thinking of buying you some new clothes. How's that sound? Izuku paused, staring at his phone as if he could see his mom smiling and speaking in the cheery tone he had just heard. Mom? A sob escaped him before he could help it, and the shuffling on the other side of the line went still. Baby? What's wrong? Did something happen? Izuku bit the inside of his cheek, calculating his options. He could tell his mom what had just happened. He could tell her that Hisashi had broken in, taken all their money, and hurt Izuku. Hell, he doubts he could patch himself at all. He could also just tell her that he's alright and that she shouldn't spend her savings on him since he doesn't really need anything. A part of him knew she wouldn't listen, though, and they really needed that money. He hadn't seen her in so long, he had started to forget what she looked like. The past few months, she'd come home to him either sleeping or being away at school, and Izuku feared that she didn't want him to see her due to the new bruises she was constantly sporting.
Or maybe she was just tired of him, tired of the life she had to live because of him. He ruined her whole life. He was a monster. Why would she want to see him? Don't worry about me, Mom. Everything is fine. It hurt his throat to speak, and he winced at the stuffy quality to his voice that came with his broken nose. Inko seemed to pick up on it too. Izuku, are you sure you're alright, dear? Are you sick? I can pick up some medicine for you on my way home. No! He cleared his throat. Really, Mom, I'm okay. We're going to need that money, though. Izuku? He broke down into tears, this time looking panicked at the pool of blood around him. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. If he was apologizing for existing, ruining her life, letting Hisashi steal their money, or hurting himself to a point of no return, Izuku wasn't sure. It felt like a combination of everything. Baby, everything is going to be okay. Listen to me. Are you hurt anywhere? Where are you? Her tone sounded worried, but Izuku was panicking too hard to register her words. Mom, I have to go. I love you. Izuku, you're worrying the crap out of me. Where? The line went dead. Izuku was well aware that he had two options now. One, he could sit there and bleed out on the carpet until his mother eventually found his corpse, or two, he could seek help. There was no way in hell he could hide any of this from her this time, but he still had a chance to survive. He knew that no hospital would treat him because of his quirkless status, so the only option he could really consider was he picked up his phone. For the second time that day, Izuku found himself in a call, unsure if he actually wanted to put in the work to stay alive. Hello, thank you for reaching out to Nichino Danwa. My name is Minukui. How can I help you today? I'm dying. The woman on the other side of the line startled, sitting up straighter in her seat. You hurt yourself? Yeah, I had a razor and I used it to cut myself. It was getting harder to breathe. Izuku spat blood. Do you still have the razor within reach? If yes, I would please ask you to put as much distance between you and the harming object as you can. Izuku raised the numb hand that had the blade still clutched tight between his fingers and aggressively threw it away. It barely fell a few inches in front of him. He felt so tired and his body was shutting down. I'm sleepy. Try not to close your eyes, please. Is there anyone you can call to take you to a nearby hospital? The boy shook his head. They'd just kick me out. I'm quirkless, but please don't hang up. I don't know how to stop the bleeding, and I don't want my mother to find me dead. Please. Izuku heard the woman let out a sound akin to a sympathetic sigh. Don't worry, I won't hang up on you just for that. I have a quirkless daughter too, you know. Enough of that, though. Do you have any aid kit that you think you could borrow, or maybe some cloth? I have some bandages that I usually use. His eyes were becoming droopier, and his body was starting to go from painfully numb to floaty. Okay, can you try to quickly get those for me? If you feel too weak to move, you can use your shirt or something else that's close to you. Izuku took his shirt off, sucking in a breath when the fabric touched his broken nose. I have my shirt, but I cut it a lot of times. Try to see the deepest cuts and prioritize applying pressure to those. Do you have anything else you can use? My bed sheets. I mean, they're pretty big, but he interrupted himself with a hiss when the pressure finally got to his hand, and instead of the numbness, his arm began to throb. With his non-bandaged hand, Izuku reached out for his bedsheets. They were All Might themed and had cost Inko a fortune, but if he didn't survive today, he would never be able to use them again anyway. Before he could dwell on it, Izuku started wrapping his arm in the fabric. Good, you're doing good. Do you have any other injuries? Izuku winced at that. I think my nose is broken. Oh, that's awful. I can give you instructions on how to set it if it's broken, and potentially snapping it back into place. But if it's bleeding, I recommend you stop that first. All right. The woman stayed on the line until Izuku was well wrapped up and no longer bleeding. She calmed him down from his spiral and fears that he was going to die and listened to his story. She was a good comfort Izuku found. By the end of the call, Izuku felt both ashamed for what he'd done and nervous for his mother's arrival at the apartment. He had probably scared the life out of her over the phone. By the time he left the call and wished the worker a good rest of her shift, or as good as she could get, Izuku's whole body felt stiff. He had sat on the floor for so long that his limbs had gone numb, and as happy as he was that the bleeding had stopped, he was still extremely tired. The woman who had talked to him on the phone had advised against sleeping before someone could take a good look at his condition, so Izuku was potentially waiting for. Hurried footsteps came from the stairway, heading towards him. Soon enough, a short, chubby woman with a soft face and a half-up, half-down hairstyle came running through the open door. He hesitantly looked up and locked eyes with her. His voice was wobbly when he spoke. Mom! Inko threw herself at him, discarding her grocery bags to the floor and holding Izuku in her arms instead. What happened? And there, as she held his face in her hands, trying to get a good look at his nose and asking questions at 100 miles a minute, Izuku realized that he was truly loved. Any doubts he had ever had regarding her love for him were pure nonsense. Izuku broke down in tears, and Inko followed suit.